Have you ever felt the weight of silent enemies watching you, hoping you'll fall, doubting your every step, waiting for you to break? You can't always see them, but you feel them. In the silence of your success, in the quiet moments of your grind, they whisper behind your back, undermine your efforts, and smile while secretly hoping for your failure. And the truth is, some of the people closest to you don't want you to grow. They want you predictable, manageable, small. Not because you've wronged them, but because your strength threatens their comfort. Your ambition reminds them of their own excuses. And your quiet rise without applause or permission is what terrifies them the most. You're not imagining the resistance. You're not being paranoid. Some people will never attack you directly. They don't throw punches. They throw silence, gossip, doubt, distractions. They study your weaknesses, wait for your low moments, and celebrate in private when you stumble. But here's the truth. They'll never say out loud they fear you. They fear what you could become if you stopped explaining, stopped doubting, and started walking in full silence with full focus. Because silent strength is the kind of power they can't predict, can't manipulate, and can't control. This is your moment to stop giving your energy to noise, to stop feeding the fire of distraction, reaction, and over-explanation. You are not built to argue with people who refuse to understand you. You are built to rise above them. You don't need to prove yourself with words. You prove it by continuing, by growing, by becoming so focused, so disciplined, so clear that nothing they do can touch your direction. And the best part, you do it without warning, without asking, without noise. That's the real power. That's the weapon they never see coming. If you've ever felt underestimated, doubted, or quietly opposed, good. That feeling is your signal. It means you've stepped outside the comfort zone others have boxed you into. It means your light is starting to shine brighter than their fear. And if you learn how to harness that energy, if you learn how to fight with silence instead of noise, you'll unlock a version of yourself that is unstoppable. You'll take down enemies without ever speaking their name. You'll rise without reacting. You'll win without seeking validation. Because silence is not weakness, it's precision. And it's time you stopped defending your power and started owning it. Keep watching, because what comes next will give you the tools you need to win your quiet battles, to stand firm when others expect you to fall, to master your emotions, your focus, your energy, and use them like weapons. The world may not hear your plans, but they'll feel the impact of your results. Stay with me. Learn these 4 silent weapons. Use them with purpose. And watch how fast your enemies start falling without a single word from you. The silent rise has begun. They say silence is empty, but that's only because they've never stood in the presence of someone who's mastered it. Real silence is not the absence of noise. It's the presence of full control. It's the fire you keep inside without letting a single spark escape. It's the strength to feel everything and still say nothing. And when you understand the psychology behind it, you realize that silence is not passive. It's a calculated move. It creates space. It builds pressure. It makes people lean in, wonder, guess, fear. Because when you don't speak, they can't read you. When you don't react, they can't control you. And that is where true power begins, not in domination, but in discipline. People who make the most noise often feel the least secure. They crave attention because their sense of self is fragile. They need to be seen, heard, validated. But you are not here to be loud. You are here to be lethal. And that means learning how to sit in silence and still radiate presence. When you walk into a room and say nothing but your energy commands attention, that's power. When you're attacked but you stay calm, composed, collected, that's intimidation. When they try to get a reaction from you and all they meet is silence, that's control. You don't need to defend yourself when your energy speaks for you. You don't need to explain your worth when your actions scream it. Every second you waste on noise is energy stolen from your vision. And your vision requires all of you. It needs your focus, your patience, your strategy. It needs you to stop flinching every time someone doubts you, insults you, ignores you. Because if you keep reacting, you keep giving away your power. But if you stay silent, you absorb their noise and convert it into fuel. You don't fight fire with fire. You smother it with silence and starve it of oxygen. That's how you win, not by clashing, but by rising. This kind of silence is not easy. It takes strength to stay still when your ego wants to scream. It takes restraint to keep building when all you want is revenge. But that is where transformation happens. Not in outbursts, but in the stillness you learn to control. And when you develop that level of self-mastery, you become untouchable. No one can rattle you. No one can shake your path because you're not fueled by noise. You're driven by vision, discipline, and purpose. Every time you choose silence over drama, you reinforce your inner authority. Every time you walk away instead of reacting, you grow sharper. Every time you stay focused while others try to distract you, you widen the gap between them and the future you're building. So stay silent, not because you're afraid to speak, but because your silence speaks louder than anything they could ever say. Let them wonder, let them talk, let them guess. Your silence is your power, and your next move is your answer. They can mock you. They can doubt you. They can even try to block you. But the one thing they can't do is match your discipline, because while they're distracted by ego, comfort, and chaos, you're building something unshakable. You're shaping a version of yourself that doesn't flinch, doesn't pause, doesn't quit. And the reason they fear you isn't because you're loud or flashy. It's because you're consistent, quietly, relentlessly. You show up, you train, you grow, you improve. And no matter how they try to provoke or delay you, they can't stop a mind that's locked in. That's what real power looks like. Not a quick flash of strength, but a fire that never burns out. Discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect. It's how you prove to yourself that your vision matters more than your moods. It's not about being perfect. It's about being committed. It's about getting up even when you're tired, staying focused even when you're surrounded by distractions, and doing the work when no one's watching. That's what breaks your enemies down. Not some grand declaration, but the slow daily evidence that you are not the same as them. You're not looking for shortcuts. You're not chasing applause. You're chasing mastery. And that scares them more than anything. Your enemy wants you to be impulsive. They want you emotional, reactive, scattered, because that makes you predictable, easy to manipulate, easy to stop. But when you lock into your routine, when your habits become armor and your structure becomes unshakable, they lose control over you. They can't lure you with distractions anymore. They can't confuse you with criticism, because discipline gives you clarity, and clarity makes you unstoppable. Every time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you become sharper. Every time you resist the urge to complain and instead focus on the next step, you level up. And every time you wake up and stick to your plan, even when no one else is clapping for you, you gain ground. The world doesn't reward the most talented. It rewards the most consistent. And those who learn to love the grind in silence become the ones who rise above all noise. You don't need to post about your hustle. You don't need to explain your schedule or announce your next move. Let your results speak. Let your progress whisper to those who once doubted you. The real flex isn't showing off, it's showing up every day, no matter how you feel. That's what sets you apart. That's what makes you lethal. Not because you talk about it, but because you live it. So tighten your routine, sharpen your focus, hold the line. Your enemies are counting on your weakness. Disappoint them with discipline. Be the one who doesn't fold, doesn't fade, doesn't flinch. Be the one who keeps building in silence until the silence becomes too loud to ignore. That's how you take them down. Quietly, ruthlessly, one disciplined day at a time. Your greatest strength will never come from how loud you speak, but from how deeply you control what you feel. Emotional detachment is not about being cold. It's not about suppressing who you are. It's about owning your emotions without letting them own you. That's when people start losing control over you. That's when their tactics fall apart. Not because you fought back, but because you refused to be moved. Weak people will always try to stir your emotions. They rely on your reaction to validate their games. They test your limits hoping you'll crack. But when you keep your peace, when you protect your focus, you frustrate their efforts. You flip the dynamic. You turn the manipulation back on them. Because what they can't control, they can't defeat. And there is no greater advantage than being emotionally grounded in a world that's addicted to impulsiveness. You are not here to react. You are here to build. And builders don't argue. They create. They rise. Every second you spend explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you is a second lost. You don't owe anyone an emotional performance. You don't need to prove your worth by how loudly you defend it. Your silence in the face of chaos is your statement. Your calm in the heat of pressure is your response. The world will test your patience. People will push your buttons. But your control over your emotions is what determines the outcome, not theirs. This kind of detachment doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you've mastered the art of choosing where your energy goes. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every provocation earns your presence. When you can observe the storm and still remain unmoved, that's when you've built real power, the kind that can't be stolen, the kind that doesn't depend on outside approval, the kind that lives inside you, steady, calm, and lethal. Let others panic. Let them shout. Let them get caught in their own emotions. You stay still. You stay sharp. Because silence plus emotional control is a deadly combination. It confuses those who rely on chaos. It frustrates those who seek a reaction, and it empowers you to keep moving forward, unaffected, undistracted, unshaken. Mastering your emotions isn't weakness, it's war. It's the battle between who you were and who you're becoming. And every time you resist the urge to react, you win. Every time you choose clarity over conflict, you grow. So protect your peace, guard your focus, train your mind to stay neutral in the face of noise. The more you detach, the more you dominate. Let them burn out chasing your reaction. You just keep building in silence. That's how empires are made. When you stop explaining and start evolving, people notice. Not because you told them, but because your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. Growth in silence is one of the most powerful forms of transformation. It doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't chase validation. It simply moves, quietly, intentionally, and with precision. And that's what makes it so threatening, because the moment you begin to outgrow the spaces that once confined you, the people who stayed the same start to feel uncomfortable. Your silence forces them to confront their own stagnation. Your progress becomes a mirror they're not ready to face. You don't need to announce your every step. Growth doesn't ask for permission. It just happens, underneath the surface, beyond the spotlight, where pressure creates strength and privacy protects the process. Every time you level up in silence, you distance yourself from the people who were only ever attached to the older version of you. And that's exactly how you take down your enemies. Without confrontation, without explanation, without noise. You let your results destroy their doubts. You let your discipline replace their disrespect. You rise so far above that they can no longer reach you, touch you, or even understand you. This world is obsessed with attention. Everyone wants to be seen, to be heard, to be known. But the real power lies in being unknown while becoming undeniable. When your progress is hidden, it can't be sabotaged. When your moves are silent, they can't be blocked. Because no one can ruin what they don't know about. And when your life speaks for itself, the people who once laughed, doubted, or tried to hold you back will have nothing left to say. That is the quiet revenge. That is the silent victory. Not every battle needs to be public. Not every achievement needs an audience. The most meaningful breakthroughs often happen behind closed doors when no one is watching. Let the others waste time trying to be seen. You stay focused on becoming unstoppable. The less they know about your life, the less they can do to influence it. The more you protect your path, the more powerful your journey becomes. You don't need to show off your grind. You don't need to speak on your plans. Just execute. In silence, with consistency, with intention. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you've stopped. Then reappear stronger, sharper, and beyond reach. That's how you eliminate doubt. That's how you break limitations. That's how you remove enemies, not with conflict, but with elevation. Grow quietly, or move silently, win privately. And when they finally look up, they won't even recognize who you've become. That's not just success. That's domination through evolution, unseen, unstoppable, untouchable. The fastest way to disarm your enemies is to no longer need their approval. When your mind is no longer occupied by the opinions of people who secretly hope you fail, you free up your energy to build something that cannot be touched. That is the power of strategic isolation. Not loneliness, not weakness, but a chosen state of focus so pure that everything else fades into the background. When you walk alone with purpose, your enemies lose their access. They can no longer distract you, delay you, or distort your path because you've removed the noise, you've stepped away. And now they can't reach what they can't see. Most people are addicted to being surrounded, constant company, constant chatter, constant validation. But true growth demands moments of separation. The deeper you want to go within yourself, the further you must pull away from the distractions around you. Isolation reveals your truth. It forces you to face your flaws, sharpen your strengths, and eliminate every excuse you've been hiding behind. That's why it's powerful. That's why it's necessary. Because when you strip away the applause, the comparisons, and the judgment, what's left is the raw version of you, the one who doesn't need anyone's permission to evolve. This is how warriors are built, not in the noise, but in the silence, not in the crowd, but in the shadows. The ones who learn to be alone, who train in quiet, who build when no one's watching, those are the ones who become dangerous. Because they don't need to be seen to keep moving. They don't need to be praised to keep going. Their validation comes from vision. Their strength comes from solitude. Their clarity comes from separation. If they can't distract you, they can't defeat you. If they can't influence your emotions, they can't control your actions. And when you choose isolation for elevation, your enemies can't follow. Because most people aren't willing to go that far. They aren't willing to be alone with their doubts, to sit in silence with their fears, to face the version of themselves that needs changing. But you are. You're different. You don't run from the hard work. You lean into it. You embrace the silence. You own the stillness. And in that stillness, you grow faster, think clearer, and move smarter. Let them stay noisy. Let them chase comfort. You walk the silent path with ruthless intention, not because it's easy, but because it's effective. You don't need crowds to feel strong. You don't need support to stay focused. Your discipline, your isolation, your vision, that's your army. And when you step out of the noise and into your purpose, you become unstoppable, because isolation doesn't weaken the strong, it perfects them. And when you reemerge, you won't need to say a word. Your transformation will speak for itself. Your silence will become your statement. And the ones who once underestimated you will realize too late. They should have feared the quiet one. The most dangerous growth happens when no one knows what you're doing. When you move in silence, you remove the interference. You eliminate the noise, the judgment, the jealousy. You shield your progress from the eyes that want to delay it. And in that protected space, you build with clarity, with purpose, with precision. This is the low profile. Not hiding, not shrinking, just refusing to hand out access to what's still in progress. The strongest people don't announce what they're creating. They finish it first. And by the time the world sees it, it's too late to stop it. The need to be seen is a weakness. The need to prove yourself to others is a distraction. Every moment spent explaining your vision is a moment taken away from executing it. The most valuable things in your life, your next move, your healing, your discipline, deserve protection, not exposure. You don't need everyone to understand your grind. You just need to keep grinding. And the less they know, the less they can attack. People can't sabotage what they can't see. They can't compete with what they can't predict. Silence gives you that edge. It turns your path into a mystery. And mystery creates fear. When your actions are loud but your words are quiet, your presence starts to carry weight. You no longer need to convince anyone of your value. You become a storm they didn't see coming. You build without announcement. You grow without validation. You stay focused while they stay distracted. And when they finally realize what you've been doing, you're already too far ahead to catch. This is what it means to build in silence. It's not just a strategy. It's a mentality, a mindset that puts progress above performance, a discipline that replaces attention with intention. Most people move loudly because they need reassurance. They need noise to feel relevant. But you've moved past that. You've tasted what it feels like to build something real, and you're no longer interested in applause that fades. You're chasing something greater, power that lasts. And to get there, you must stop giving people a front row seat to your every decision. Let them wonder, let them guess, let them assume. Their opinion has no place in your process. You don't need them to believe in it, you need to finish it. This is your reminder to tighten your circle. Secure your energy, guard your progress. Don't post your plans, don't explain your moves. Just work. Let the results speak. Let the silence carry the weight. Because when it's all said and done, the ones who made the most noise will be forgotten. But the one who moved quietly and built something unshakable will be impossible to ignore. You don't need to make noise to be noticed. You just need to win. And the most dangerous victories are the ones no one saw coming. Stay low. Stay focused. Let the silence do the damage. There is a silent killer that separates those who dream from those who dominate. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's consistency. The quiet, daily discipline that no one applauds. The unseen grind that builds unshakable power. While others wait for motivation, you move. While they look for shortcuts, you stay the course. And while they get tired of the process, you become the process. That is what makes you dangerous. Not because you talk about it, but because you show up when it's hard, when it's boring, when no one's watching. Your consistency becomes your greatest weapon, because nothing is more terrifying to your enemies than someone who refuses to stop. They expected you to slow down. They counted on your burnout. They thought you'd lose interest, give up, fade out. But you kept showing up, quietly, relentlessly, without fanfare, without noise. That's what breaks them. Not your volume, but your persistence. Not your announcements, but your actions. Because they realize they can't distract you, can't discourage you, can't delay what you're building. Your pace may not be loud, but it's lethal. Because it never breaks. It never wavers. It just keeps going. Most people live on highs. They chase quick wins, viral moments, sudden breakthroughs. But none of that lasts. It fades just as fast as it appears. The ones who win long-term don't rise on hype. They rise on repetition. They commit to the small, quiet steps every single day until momentum becomes identity, until work ethic becomes instinct, until success becomes inevitable. And that kind of consistency makes you unstoppable, not because you force it, but because you've trained for it. Discipline is loud in results and quiet in effort. When you train your mind to stop waiting for the right mood, you become powerful. When you move regardless of how you feel, you become unstoppable. Consistency is not about perfection. It's about never letting the day win. It's about refusing to hand your future over to excuses. Every time you show up when it's inconvenient, you separate yourself from those who only move when it's easy. And that gap grows bigger every single day. The ones who fear you most are the ones who know they can't outlast you. They may be louder, they may be flashier, but they don't have your endurance. And when you combine silence with consistency, you become a storm they can't predict, a force they can't compete with, and a result they can't deny. Keep showing up. Keep moving in silence. Keep proving them wrong, not with noise, but with progress. Let your routine do the talking. Let your habits write the story. And let your presence day after day become the reminder that no one can match a soul that refuses to quit. That's how you win. That's how you conquer. That's how you rise, by becoming the one who never goes away. Power doesn't need to prove itself. It's felt. It's seen in the way you walk, in the way you carry silence like a shield, in the way you don't flinch when the world tries to shake you. Calm confidence is a signal. It tells people that you know who you are, that you're not moved by opinions, that you're not easily shaken by noise, and it triggers something in the people who try to intimidate you. Because nothing unsettles the insecure more than someone who doesn't need attention to feel strong. When your energy is grounded, when your presence is still but unbreakable, they feel it. Even before you speak, they already know they're dealing with someone they can't control. True confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to dominate conversations. It doesn't seek approval or chase applause. It's rooted deep within. It's the result of discipline, self-awareness, and inner work. And once you develop it, the world starts responding to you differently. People pause before they challenge you. They think twice before they disrespect you. Because your silence says what words never could. It speaks of preparation, of resilience, of intention. And the ones who used to underestimate you will begin to question themselves. Not because you attacked them, but because your stillness exposed their chaos. Calm confidence is the quiet resistance against everything that wants to break you. It's the refusal to let fear speak louder than faith. It's the decision to walk in alignment with your purpose. Even when pressure is high and doubts are loud, you no longer need to be reactive because you've already made up your mind. You know what you're doing, where you're going, and who you're becoming. That clarity silences everything else. It removes the need to defend, to argue, to explain. That's where your power lives, in the certainty that you no longer owe anyone a performance. The calmest person in the room controls the room, not because they shout the loudest, but because they've mastered themselves. While others panic, they pause. While others react, they observe. While others lash out, they remain composed. That's control. That's presence. And that's how you win battles most people never see. Not by being loud, but by being immovable. Not by showing force, but by radiating strength without saying a word. Make silence your advantage. Let your steady presence speak for you. You don't need to defend your confidence to people who can't recognize it. You just need to embody it. Let them talk, guess, assume. Their noise is not your concern. Your path is clear. Your energy is stable. Your future is built on foundations they'll never understand. And every time you walk in silence with unwavering calm, you remind them of what true power looks like. You remind them that real strength doesn't need a voice to be heard. It only needs to be felt. The most unsettling thing you can do to someone who thrives on conflict is give them nothing, no reaction, no explanation, no response. Silence becomes your power when you realize that not everything deserves your energy. The moment you stop giving people the satisfaction of knowing they've disturbed your peace, you begin to take control of your world. You rob them of the power they believed they had. And what's left is confusion, frustration, and fear, because people don't know how to handle what they can't provoke. Your silence becomes their discomfort. Your calm becomes their chaos. They want you angry. They want you defensive. They want you to fall into the trap of needing to justify your actions, your growth, your direction. Don't give it to them. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them misunderstand. That's not your burden to carry. You don't owe anyone an explanation for evolving. You don't owe a reaction to people who never had the courage to do what you're doing. And you don't owe peace to those who only bring conflict. Your strength is in your restraint. Because silence is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that sometimes the most powerful move is not to move at all. There's a reason they keep poking at you. It's not because they're stronger. It's because they're insecure. And your silence exposes that. Every time you remain calm in the face of provocation, you raise the standard. You separate yourself from the noise. You step into a space where your energy no longer matches the drama around you. And in that space, your presence starts to speak louder than any words ever could. You become a mirror. You reflect back to them the chaos they tried to throw at you, and you do it without saying a thing. This kind of self-control doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from evolution. You've grown past the point of being pulled into every fight. You've built too much to throw it away for temporary emotions. And you've come too far to let someone else dictate how you feel. That's the mindset of someone who's focused. Someone who knows their mission is bigger than their ego. Someone who understands that silence isn't retreat, it's strategy. Because while they're busy shouting into the void, you're busy creating something they'll never touch. The more silent you are, the louder your energy becomes. The less you say, the more they wonder. And the more they wonder, the more they realize they can't reach you. That's power. Not the kind that needs to be flexed, but the kind that can't be ignored. So stop arguing with people who aren't even listening. Stop explaining to those who are committed to misunderstanding. You have nothing to prove. Let your life be the response. Let your growth be the revenge. Let your silence be the victory. Because some battles are not won through words. They're won through discipline, restraint, and the undeniable force of someone who refuses to be moved. They won't understand your silence until it's too late. By the time they realize you were never ignoring them, you were outgrowing them, they'll be watching from a distance they can't close. That's the cost of peace. That's the result of growth. When you elevate in silence, you start to vibrate on a frequency that their noise can't reach. You no longer react to pettiness. You no longer shrink for comfort. You no longer play small just to keep others calm. You've outgrown the version of yourself that once needed to be heard. Now you only care about being effective. Your silence is no longer about absence. It's about alignment with your purpose, with your vision, with your future. You become powerful when your decisions are no longer driven by emotion but by direction. When you stop chasing closure and start creating clarity. You no longer need people to understand why you moved the way you did. You no longer wait for them to catch up. You shift silently and boldly toward your higher self. The more you heal, the quieter you become. Because healed people don't shout, they move different. They carry peace that doesn't beg to be validated. They walk through chaos untouched. And that presence alone sends a message louder than words ever could. Let them wonder why you're quiet. Let them create their stories. You don't need to correct the record. You don't need to set anything straight. The truth will always rise, and your consistency will always reveal it. When your life begins to elevate, your silence becomes your shield. It protects your energy, guards your path, and keeps your momentum safe from those who only want to pull you backward. This is your evolution, and evolution requires separation, not out of hate, but out of necessity. Not because you're better, but because you're becoming. You don't rise by convincing others to see your worth. You rise by acting like it's already known, not to impress, not to prove, but because that's who you've become. Silence becomes dangerous when it's powered by certainty. When you no longer react, no longer defend, no longer explain, you step into a level of maturity that makes enemies irrelevant. You are no longer triggered by noise. You are no longer shaken by doubt. You are no longer at war with people who haven't even begun to face themselves. This is what happens when you stop giving energy to what drains you. You get sharper, stronger, clearer. You realize you never needed them to understand. You just needed space to become. And now that you've become, you realize silence was never a sign of weakness. It was the path to your real power. The kind that doesn't need attention. The kind that doesn't need defense. The kind that stands tall, rooted, and unshaken. Let them talk, let them doubt, let them fade. You just keep moving in silence because you're not trying to prove you've changed. You're too busy living it. There's a shift that happens when you finally stop trying to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your greatness. When you stop shrinking to keep others comfortable, something inside you wakes up. The version of you that was buried under doubt, fear, and fake humility begins to rise. And it rises in silence. Not to be seen, but to become. Because when you stop asking for permission and start owning your presence, you reclaim every ounce of power you once gave away. You realize that you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break patterns. And breaking patterns requires silence. It requires space. It requires the discipline to grow even when no one is watching. Your enemies aren't always loud. Sometimes they smile in your face and sabotage you in silence. But when you learn to move without announcement, without seeking validation, you make yourself untouchable. Not because you're hiding, but because you've stopped bleeding in front of people who secretly celebrate your wounds. Your silence becomes your protection. It becomes a boundary, a wall that separates your purpose from their projections. Because not everyone deserves to witness your rise. Some only want to watch so they can hope for your fall. That's why silence is sacred. It's not about isolating, it's about insulating, protecting what matters, guarding what's real. The more you grow, the more selective you must become with your energy. You can't carry everyone. You can't explain everything. You can't keep watering connections that drain you. Sometimes your silence is the only answer they deserve, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You've learned that peace is not something you stumble upon. It's something you protect with fierce intention. And that protection often looks like walking away without warning, like going quiet instead of going off, like choosing not to participate in chaos you've already outgrown. You don't owe your growth to people who mocked your potential. You don't owe your healing to those who benefited from your brokenness. You owe it to yourself to become everything they hoped you'd never be. Not out of revenge, but out of responsibility. Because the longer you stay in places that don't align with your vision, the more you delay the life you were meant to create. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them misunderstand. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be effective. The lonely nights where you chose growth over comfort. And when it arrives, it won't ask for permission. It'll simply show up, strong, undeniable, unshakable. So keep building. Keep walking in silence. Keep moving with purpose. Let your transformation be your response. Let your elevation speak the words you no longer need to say. Because when the dust settles, they won't remember what you said. They'll remember what you became. There's a certain power that comes from knowing you are no longer available for anything that disrupts your peace. When your standards rise, your circle shrinks. When your vision sharpens, distractions fall away. And when your purpose becomes louder in your mind than any voice around you, everything starts to align. You stop chasing, stop explaining, stop proving. You become rooted. And that stillness, that quiet certainty in who you are and where you're going, sends a message far louder than words. It tells the world that you've stepped into full control, that no outside noise can reach the inner strength you've built in silence. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are not here to be understood by those who choose confusion. You are here to grow, to rise, to execute. And growth demands separation. It demands you stop entertaining the same cycles with the same people just to feel safe. The truth is, the people who fear your potential will always try to limit your reach. They'll guilt you, mock you, question your choices, all to keep you exactly where they feel comfortable. But your destiny doesn't live in their comfort zone. It lives beyond their opinions, beyond their approval. And silence becomes your liberation because you no longer need to fight battles that don't grow you. You no longer waste breath on people who already made their decision about you. You simply keep moving while they stay stuck. They will call your silence arrogance. They will label your distance as disrespect. But those labels come from their own insecurities. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Every step you take in silence makes it harder for them to keep up. And the higher you climb, the less they matter. You're not being cold. You're being clear. You're not being rude. You're being real. You've decided that your peace, your focus, and your future are not up for debate. And the more you protect those things, the more powerful you become. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting off anything that doesn't feed your soul. That includes toxic conversations, dead-end relationships, self-sabotaging thoughts, and environments that drain more than they give. You weren't born to repeat the same mistakes under the disguise of loyalty or fear. You were born to evolve, and evolution doesn't happen in noise. It happens in silence, in reflection, in solitude. That's where you hear your own voice again. That's where you reconnect with your mission. That's where you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So let them wonder why you went quiet. Let them speculate. While they waste time guessing, you'll be building. While they argue in circles, you'll be elevating in straight lines. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of strength. And when your silence is powered by purpose, nothing can shake you. Keep walking, keep rising. Let your absence speak the truth your words no longer need to carry. Because peace is your power, and silence is how you protect it. There comes a moment when you no longer seek to be understood because you finally understand yourself. That is the turning point. That is when your silence becomes sacred. When you realize not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, or your energy, the more you protect your mind, the more unstoppable you become. When you speak less, you observe more. You catch the patterns. You see the truth. You hear the intentions behind the words. And in that silence, you start to read people clearly. You begin to separate the genuine from the deceptive, not by what they say, but by what your intuition reveals when the noise is gone. Silence sharpens your instincts. It teaches you patience. It gives you space to think before you move. And in a world obsessed with speed and noise, your calm presence becomes intimidating. It unsettles those who rely on chaos, because silence gives you control, the kind of control that keeps you from falling into emotional traps, the kind that helps you respond instead of react. The kind that lets you see 10 steps ahead while they're still focused on provoking you. That's the edge. That's the silent power that dismantles your enemies without confrontation. You don't have to prove your intelligence. Your restraint does it for you. You don't have to prove your strength. Your composure does it for you. You don't have to scream your worth. Your decisions speak for you. The louder the world gets, the more powerful